Hi guys, welcome to Rossi Audio. New video, new topic. I am a member of many Facebook groups on in the audio community, and many of them are vintage audio because I like vintage audio. I have a lot of vintage audio, and most of my speakers are in fact vintage, 70s and 80s. I think I have a few from the 90s, but that's about it. I had this. I was not participating in this conversation that was going on, but I was watching it, and it made me think, and it made me kind of laugh because people are talking about, oh, yeah, these speakers are really good, better than them, better than this, and all that stuff, and those are shit, and these are good, and many of these people are bragging about these speakers that were built in Japan during the 60s, 70s, and early 80s, and they say, oh yeah, they pound and they hit and they're good bass and really good. And I'm beg to differ, because if you look at the build and the construction of the Japanese speakers from the 60s, 70s, and early 80s, or through the 80s for that matter, or even in the 90s, they were far behind European, American, and Scandinavian, Australian built speakers, so they can't even compete. And I'm here today to show you why. This one guy said, well, my speaker has 10-inch and it's a three-way. Was built by, I think it was Kenwood, and some other guy had some Pioneer speakers, and then there was someone that had some Sony speakers, and it was all kinds of Japanese speakers. Let me show you something, okay? Here we have a typical late 70s, kind of dirty. I'm going to blow this one up on purpose. Typical 10-inch Japanese woofer. The brand that made these made most woofers for most companies. A lot of people don't know this, but in Japan there was like 2 or 3 companies who made the speaker drivers for most brands that came out of Japan. This brand here built for themselves. They built for Fisher. They built for Kenwood, and they built a lot for Pioneer, JVC, Sony, and so on and so on. Who is this manufacturer? This is Sanyo. Sanyo built a lot for a lot of companies. Here we have stamped steel. Right off the bat, the shittiest construction you can have on a speaker frame. If you want good speaker frame, you use cast. Or if you want to have stamped steel, at least make it a little bit thicker than this. And I'm going to show you why. Here I have a typical 70s. This one needs to be recombed. This is a typical 70s Servan Vega driver that was used. This one was made by Hepner. This is a Hepner driver. Stamped steel, but the stamped steel is, God almighty, almost twice the thickness. Now, a huge, monstrous magnet and motor that house probably 3/4, maybe an inch if we are kind. Voice coil, but this one is probably more or less a 3/4 inch voice coil. Weighs nothing. This one will have very low power handling. It will have resonances from the frame itself, like crazy. The X-mass is nothing. The spider inside of it is tiny, which means Not much movement, so the X-Mass is not there. Um, just a shitty thing all over. Plastic frame. Plastic frame. Typical for a lot of older vintage Japanese shit. Here we have at least metal all the way around. You see the difference in magnet? And this was back in the 70s when big voice coils was not the topic of the day. Jeez, I wonder which woofer would do the best job. Now, to make it a little bit more interesting, I'll put that one down. And you might say, well, there is differences in woofers. Of course there is. I'm going to show you another thing. We're still going to deal with this shit. And I'm going to take a 6.5 inch mid-range from Sir Vega. I wouldn't brag too much about this crap. This is a mid-range. This is a woofer. This one is at least 4 times as heavy. Jesus. Why would anyone brag about this crap? Still not satisfied? Japanese woofer, 1970s, Sir Vega. Oh, there's some screws hanging onto it. Tweeter. A dome tweeter. The magnet on the tweeter from Sir Vega is bigger than the magnet on the woofer, 10-inch woofer. This tweeter weighs more than this woofer. Still want to brag about it? I am not saying that all Japanese speakers or woofers made in that area is this small, but many of them are. Most of them are. I'm going to show you one Japanese one that was also made by Sanyo. This was made by Sanyo. It comes from a Fisher speaker. This is an 8-inch. Here they put a little bit more effort into it. So sometimes you can get good drivers. Still stamped steel. The thickness is thinner than on the other one, but you have a better magnet, a bigger magnet. This 8-inch here is heavier than this 10-inch here, and as you can see, huge difference. So every now and then Japan made something okay, but for the most part this is what they built. This is so light, this is so crappy, and this is so cheap. It's gonna be a fun project to blow this one up. It works, but it's going to be blown up. So you might say, okay, some of them had that woofer type and that structure on the magnet, and then you might say, well, some of the Pioneers, some of the Sansuis, some of the other models, other brands had cast frames. Yes, they did. But they were not designed or had any influence from any Japanese engineer at all. When Pioneer built a better speaker, a better lineup, it was in fact engineers from JBL who engineered the drivers in those models. And I have also seen, well, I have in fact in my storage a few 15-inch Pioneer woofers, and they have the same magnet size as this 8-inch here. That in itself is not a big thing. When you can get a 10-inch Servant Vega with a magnet like that and cast frame. Now we're talking. Or even the smaller models from Servant Vega has a bigger magnet. This one is about, I want to say, 40% bigger than any Chinese 15-inch magnet that I have seen lately. So, yeah, you might get a good sound for a few people from some Chinese cheap shit speakers. But if you want something that has a realistic bottom end to it, we're not talking just about sound from 100 hertz and up or 50 hertz and up. We're talking about speakers that can go all the way down, follow music that you play. You need speakers with good drivers. And I'm sorry, but Japanese speakers from the 70s, 80s, 90s do not fall in under that category. They maybe have a pleasant good sound. There might be a model, special edition model here and there like Technics did. There's only, if I'm going to be really on the point to it, there is really only one brand that, well, two brands. I'm going to give two brands. Pioneer had one or two models in a series, the HPM, that had some okay stuff. Beside that, there is only two really brands that sound really good and that has some type of a good structure on the build up and good quality. And that is Yamaha and some models of Technics, the old ones, the very high end lineup from Technics. They had a high end speaker lineup, and those are the only two that from Japan can really say have a good sound. I'm sorry, but if you have a pair of Pioneers and you brag about them, or a pair of Sensuis for that matter, they are crap. I know I'm going to take a lot of heat for this, but I don't really care. It's my opinion. I'm entitled to it. When you have heard other speakers side by side, Japanese speakers from 60s, 70s, and 80s, 90s, it is given that the Japanese are not as good as the other ones. It's just the way it is. So remember that next time you start bragging about a Japanese speaker. I don't even think this one weighs, I don't even think it weighs 3 pounds. Maybe 2.5 pounds. This is nothing. And a lot of Japanese from the day was made like this. Mighty big magnet. Remember, the magnet is the motor on the driver. Wow. Piece of crap.